Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you share with us and, well, we turn them into the most fascinating, knowledge-packed conversation you're going to hear all week. Today, we are tackling a question that, it underpins so much of human drama, comedy, and just complexity.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about that enduring dynamic where women are famously coy, elusive, mysterious, and men are, well, perpetually trying to figure out the operating manual.
It's the core conflict of sitcoms, right? Dating guides, half of all literature, probably. We tend to frame this as, a modern psychological riddle.
Or a cultural failure, mismatched communication styles.
Exactly. But the sources we're diving into today, they just bypass all of that. They argue that this entire setup, the chase, the need for long-term effort, the inevitable confusion, it all traces back to one really astonishingly simple biological tweak.
A single modification.
A single modification that separates Homo sapiens from nearly every other mammal on the planet.
That's right. So our mission today is to decode this dynamic, which, let's call it the coy clueless complex for now. And we're going to trace it straight back to its evolutionary root. We're examining sources that argue the single culprit is something called concealed ovulation.
Correct. And that's what we're looking at. How this one evolutionary change, this hiding of the fertile window, didn't just change female biology. It fundamentally reshaped male cognitive processes. It basically invented the unique human pair bond.
And even drove our cultural obsessions with things like purity and secrecy.
Yeah. The dynamic that was coded into our bodies over millions of years is now, it's deeply coded into our brains. It governs our relationships.
It's a total reframing, isn't it? Because if you accept this premise, we're not struggling with, bad communication skills.
Yeah.
We're just expressing a deep-seated and actually very successful evolutionary strategy.
It removes the blame.
It does. It removes the blame from the individual and places it squarely on our history, on our biology.
Exactly. It shows that human sexual behavior and bonding they're a profound anomaly in the mammalian world. Our relationships are just fundamentally different from our closest relatives because of this one pivot.
Right.
And understanding that divergence, I think, is the key to understanding why our relationships are so complicated, but also why they're capable of such deep, sustained commitment.
Okay, let's unpack this. So when most people think about the evolutionary trajectories of Homo sapiens, they rightly focus on the big stuff. Bipedalism, big brains, tools.
The greatest hits. Yeah.
The greatest hits. But according to our sources, one of the most critical shifts, the one that really allowed our massive brains and our long dependency periods to even survive, was a shift in relationship roles.
Right.
And ironically, it looks a lot like a gender role reversal compared to what you see in most other mammals.
It really does. It required a kind of co-evolutionary dance. A change on one side absolutely necessitated a change on the other. You see these two massive shifts that set us completely apart from the primate norm.
Especially around parenting and sex.
Especially around parental investment and sexuality, yes.
So let's start with the male side of that equation, because that one is, I think, maybe the most surprising reversal.
I agree. The Homo sapiens male evolved to become, in a functional sense, more like the generalized female mammal.
How so?
In terms of resource allocation and commitment. Specifically, human males developed this intense propensity for long-term bonds with their offspring, the institution we now just call dad care.
Which is, that's pretty rare, isn't it, in the wider mammalian world?
It's almost unheard of. In the general mammalian model, males are typically relevant for, the moment of conception. And that's about it. Their job is done.
And we have to remember why this shift was so critical for humans. Our babies are incredibly altricial.
That's the biological term for just completely helpless.
Right. A human baby requires years, often a decade or more, of intense caloric and protective investment. The mother alone, especially in the harsh environments of early hominids, she couldn't possibly provision and protect that child while also foraging for herself. It's just not viable.
Precisely. The energy cost of our big brains, both in the womb and then during development, it's just enormous. It demanded 2 full-time providers. So for the human male to be selected, to stick around, to commit resources, to help raise the young, well, that required a radical shift in his bonding behavior.
He had to be tethered to the family unit.
Emotionally and physically, for the long haul. And that commitment Ironically, it mirrors the kind of baseline parental investment you see in a standard mammalian female.
Okay, so that's the male shift. Now, for the female shift, the one that our sources say is the biological trigger for this whole coy, clueless dynamic.
Right. The sources suggest Homo sapiens females became functionally more like male mammals, in a sense,
In what sense?
because they evolved to have this continuous low-level sexual receptivity. The sources describe it pretty simply, but I think accurately, as evolving to be, well, less chaste, or having a continuous but lower intensity of arousal.
And this point is so critical because you need the context to understand just how huge a change this was.
Absolutely. You have to define the hormonal baseline of a non-human mammal.
Mm.
Before us, the default state for female mammals was essentially reproductive abstinence.
So sexual interest wasn't just a background hum.
Not at all. It was reserved for a brief, intense, and very highly advertised window of fertility. We call it the estrus period.
So, to use an analogy, if a generalized female mammal's sexual interest is a switch that is almost always in the off position,
Yeah,
the human female's is more like a dimmer switch that's always on, just set to low or medium.
that's a perfect way to put it. And that continuous low-level arousal is a deviation from the evolutionary norm that directly enabled the male shift toward commitment.
Ah, okay. The two are linked.
They have to be. Think about the logistics. If the female was only receptive for a single obvious week per cycle, the male would show up, he'd mate, and then he'd wander off for the other 3 weeks.
Right, to compete with other males or just conserve energy.
Exactly. He wouldn't be around long enough to form that critical long-term bond, and the offspring, in that scenario, would likely starve.
So, the male became a committed parent, but only because the female became consistently receptive. She provided this persistent, though, statistically unlikely opportunity for reproduction.
And that is the foundation. The entire structure of human pair bonding is built on that trade-off, all thanks to the removal of that visible estrus signal.
It's a really remarkable, almost paradoxical development.
It is. By making reproduction less efficient on a per-act basis, nature actually forced the male to adopt a strategy of continuous attention.
And that, in turn, secured the long-term parental investment he needed to provide. So to really appreciate just how revolutionary concealed ovulation is, we have to look across the evolutionary fence. We have to look at the mammalian standard. Estrus. This is where the difference between, say, a Homo sapien and a baboon becomes, well, shockingly clear.
It's night and day. Estrus is, to use the source's term, it's a giant public sign. Across vast swaths of the mammalian world, fertility is not a mystery. It's an undeniable, overt physiological event that is designed for maximum detection.
It creates that famous Jekyll and Hyde transformation you read about.
Absolutely. For most of the cycle, the female mammal is in a state of hormonal quiet. She's just not interested. But when those fertile days arrive, her body is flooded with hormones, and that triggers estrus.
Which is a Latin word. Right.
It is. It refers to a state of intense temporary reproductive drive. It basically means, as one source put it, me so horny.
And this shift is accompanied by signals that are impossible to ignore.
Impossible. For our primate cousins like chimpanzees and baboons, estrus involves these massive, unambiguous physiological markers. The sources detail them pretty vividly.
Right, the appearance of dramatic sexual swellings.
A large, brightly colored pink or scarlet area around the genitals. The production of powerful aphrodisiac olfactory cues. Smells.
And even behavioral changes, right. The female actively solicits contact.
She'll present herself to the male. It's active posturing. It's designed to get his attention and, well, get the job done. The clarity is absolute.
The message is simple, direct, and universally understood by every single male in the troop. There's no guesswork.
None. And the result is efficiency and predictability. Males can easily deduce when the female is fertile, and so sex is very tightly timed to that fertile window.
Which means estrus sex has a very high probability of leading directly to pregnancy.
Extremely high. Reproduction is maximized during a brief, dedicated window, and the male's investment is likewise brief and dedicated.
Okay, now let's pivot back to us, the human anomaly. We are one of the, vanishingly few mammals who do not enter estrus, and we are the only primate with concealed ovulation.
And this concealment means two things at once. First, the human female lacks all those explicit visual or olfactory signposts of fertility.
Just gone.
Gone. And second, she is sexually receptive during her whole cycle. Now, obviously her hormonal fluctuations mean there's variability in desire, but she is, in principle, receptive all the time,
Hmm.
just with a less desperately intense drive than an animal in full-blown estrus.
So we basically swapped high-intensity, short-duration receptivity for low-intensity, long-duration receptivity.
Yes, and we hid the prize, the fertile window.
It seems like such a small physiological change on paper, but it completely destabilized the male's ancient programming.
It was a total game changer. I mean, it completely restructured the shift in selection pressure. It eliminated the sensory cue that males had evolved over millennia to respond to.
So let's really analyze that male predicament in detail. The hominid male can no longer tell when a female is ready for impregnation.
Can't tell it all.
So the genes for those ancient males, the ones who were only attracted to the bright, short-lived ester signals, they were essentially deselected.
They were. Why waste your energy chasing a signal that doesn't exist anymore? It's a failing strategy.
The pressure shifted entirely.
Completely. Natural selection no longer favored the male who was, say, the strongest or most dominant for just 3 days a month.
It started to favor the male who could maintain proximity, interest, and engagement for 30 days a month.
Right. The new winning strategy was for males to be attracted all month long and, critically, to keep having sex continuously in the hope of, hitting the jackpot.
That sustained effort, that perpetual attraction regardless of an explicit fertility sign, that is the cognitive and behavioral adaptation that defines human male sexuality in this context.
Yes, it's an ongoing low-grade attempt to solve the mystery of fertility.
What's fascinating here is
Yeah.
that this continuous sexual behavior, it evolved not for efficiency,
Not at all.
but for social maintenance, for bonding.
Exactly. The male who secured his mate through constant attention had a far, far higher chance of reproductive success than the male who waited for a signal that never came.
And that requires a whole new set of cognitive skills.
An entirely new set.
Yeah.
Attentiveness, sustained presence, investment. The simple old male programming was replaced by a much more complex relationship programming.
The cost of reproduction, in terms of efficiency, it plummeted. But the bonding mechanism went up exponentially.
It's the fundamental trade-off that defined our species. So now we have to explore the profound functional consequence of all this. If human sexual intercourse is no longer efficiently linked to the few fertile days, which, statistics absolutely confirm, most human sex is non-fertile,
Right.
what is the new function of human
If
sexuality?
the entire purpose pivots. Since sex without estrus almost never leads to pregnancy, the majority of human sexual intercourse serves not to reproduce.
But overwhelmingly to bond. It functions as social cement.
That is the core thesis of our sources. Evolutionary biologists suggest that female Homo sapiens evolved the sexual mystery specifically as a mechanism to keep males perpetually enticed.
And most importantly, more liable to form lasting attachments. The goal isn't immediate conception. The goal is sustained commitment.
So the famous coyness, the elusiveness, the subtle push and pull, these aren't flaws in modern dating.
Not at all. They are deeply ingrained biological strategies.
Designed to secure that long-term parental investment that's so necessary for our helpless offspring.
Precisely. The female needs the male's resources and protection for, a decade, maybe more. And the best way to keep him invested is to keep the question of fertility, and therefore the rewards of being close to her, perpetually open.
The continuous pursuit creates the bond.
It has to. The male invests time, effort, and attention because he is trying to solve the puzzle of fertility. And that sustained investment over time, it morphs into the emotional and physical attachment required for the pair bond.
This is the ultimate evolutionary necessity, because human childhood dependency is just too long for single parenting to be the primary survival strategy.
It's too risky.
Which means the entire dynamic is coded into our brains as much as our bodies. It created this famous psychological game.
It did. And it required a massive cognitive shift for the male.
How so?
Well, we had to evolve a far more sophisticated theory of mind than our baboon ancestors. If the fertile window isn't visibly displayed on the body, the male has to try to deduce the state of the female by interpreting subtle cues.
Emotional cues, psychological ones, behavioral ones.
All of it. The male had to become a perpetual emotional tracker.
Let's delve into that specific psychological game. The sources argue it really boils down to this. Men try to figure out how to maximize sexual access, linking that access, however subconsciously, to the possibility of reproduction.
Right.
And women, evolutionarily speaking, they try to maintain the relationship by keeping men trying to figure them out.
The uncertainty is the glue, but the coyness is the management strategy for that uncertainty.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, if the female were continuously and overtly available, the male's perceived value of the interaction, and therefore his required investment, would drop.
Oh, okay.
Coyness maintains the value of the relationship. It ensures he keeps paying attention and providing resources. It's an attention economy, and it's optimized for persistence.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Go on.
If the male is forced into continuous proximity and emotional tracking, he starts developing deeper cognitive connections to the female, connections that go way beyond just reproduction.
Yes.
We're talking about the genesis of love, of companionship, of emotional sensitivity.
That's all a side effect.
These profound emotional connections are an incredibly successful side effect of the evolutionary need for co-parenting, which is driven by uncertain sexual access.
Exactly. The human male was pressured to evolve skills, nuance, emotional sensitivity, empathy, that are completely irrelevant to a baboon male.
Because he doesn't need them.
He doesn't need them. For a human male, the only way to successfully hit the jackpot in a concealed ovulation system is to be the preferred mate. And being the preferred mate means being committed and attentive. This favors the development of deeper, more cognitive attachment.
But the coyness itself, that hiding of intent, that behavior could easily be interpreted as manipulation in a modern context. How do the sources justify that as a necessary functional strategy?
It's not manipulation in an evolutionary sense. It's resource management. If she reveals her intent too quickly or too easily, the male might seize the opportunity and leave, fulfilling his immediate biological mandate without any long-term commitment.
Right, the hit-and-run strategy.
Exactly. By making her intent elusive, the female effectively secures a kind of contract for future resource investment. The relationship becomes a continuous, low-risk, high-reward proposition for the male, which incentivizes him to stay nearby.
The benefit of staying close always outweighs the energy cost of wandering off.
Which is vital for the safety of the pair bond and the offspring. The perpetual state of low-level arousal combined with the concealment of fertility creates the tension that defines human courtship.
If she signaled fertility, the male would show up, do his duty, and leave, like most of the animal kingdom.
Right. But since she is continuously receptive, but not continuously fertile, the male has to stay attentive. He has to develop those skills of relationship management that ensure she doesn't select a different, more attentive mate.
So we moved from sex as an efficient reproductive tool
to sexuality as a powerful mechanism for social cohesion. The coyness and the mystery are just the behavioral manifestations of concealed ovulation. They maintain the necessary tension and engagement to ensure the male stays bonded for the next 10 years of parental effort.
Okay, so now we shift from biology and psychology to culture. Because when you intentionally hide a vital biological function, like the timing of fertility, and by extension, you shroud the visible signs of its absence, like menstruation, the sources suggest that this secrecy breeds something powerful and culturally pervasive.
Paranoia.
Paranoia.
This is where biology crashes right into sociology. The same uncertainty that forces bonding also creates fear, superstition, and mechanisms of cultural control.
How does that work?
Well, since human males can't tell when the female is fertile, the one visible sign they do get, the menstrual cycle, becomes something mysterious, threatening, and something that needs to be ritually controlled or isolated.
Because it's the only clear biological signal they receive.
And it signals reproductive failure for that month. It's a signal of non-fertility.
And we see this massive cultural fallout across, almost every Homo sapiens culture, ancient and modern.
Yeah.
The menstrual cycle is treated with these strict rules and often, outright terror.
It manifests as taboos. Taboos about purity, isolation, avoidance.
Historically, males lacking any scientific clarity, they often reacted by retreating in fear and writing these strict rules about purity.
But crucially, the sources point out that females participate in this cultural pathology. They hide their menstrual cycle. They shroud it in mysterious rituals. And often they internalize the idea that it's shameful or, polluting.
And this cultural pattern, it isn't some universal biological imperative.
No, it's a direct consequence of the loss of reproductive transparency. If everyone knew exactly when the fertile window was, the sign of non-fertility would carry far, far less mysterious weight.
To truly grasp the gravity of this human cultural reaction, we need our control group.
We need the baboon.
We can use the baboon example to illustrate what happens in a system where there is zero reproductive mystery.
The baboon system is the epitome of the honest system. They exhibit none of this human paranoia, none of the cultural secrecy or ritualistic avoidance around fertility or menstruation.
Because the baboon female makes her entire cycle a public pronouncement.
It's a billboard. It's a transparent system that guarantees everyone in the group knows her exact reproductive status, and that eliminates the need for any form of coyness or nuanced emotional tracking.
The whole game we have to play, they just sidestep it.
Completely. And this transparency is achieved through these dramatic, clear fertility signposts. They serve as an immediate, undeniable signal to the entire troop.
The sources get pretty specific, but the takeaway is that the baboon female's body provides absolute clarity.
Absolute non-negotiable clarity. A pink swelling means she's ovulating and fertile. The color changes to scarlet after she's conceived. It disappears altogether when she's not fertile. Each stage has its own look.
And its own smell, right, for the blind baboons, as the source puts it.
Exactly. The system is designed to eliminate ambiguity. It removes any need for guesswork, for emotional sensitivity, for subtle psychological interpretation. Everything the male needs to know is visible, olfactory, and immediate.
This clarity has immense consequences for their social structure, and specifically for the life of the baboon male.
Right. Let's contrast his life with the complex, nuanced psychological world of a human. Because of the sheer transparency, baboon males are never ensnared by mysterious reproductive possibilities.
He's never confused.
Never. He knows exactly how fertile she is at any given moment, and he sets his mating schedule around that explicit signal.
And crucially, this means the baboon male has not evolved any sensitivity to female feelings.
Why would he?
He doesn't need to. He doesn't have to read mood swings or decipher subtle social cues to figure out her viability. His entire interaction is transactional. It's based on a clear, hormonal, physical signal.
And that lack of sustained investment means they don't develop long-term pair bonds. They don't engage in dad care.
Their priority remains competition and hierarchy.
The good old boys network. If the female is not signaling fertility, the male retreats to fighting or feeding. He leaves the female to raise the young on her own or with her female relatives. The transparency means there's no need for commitment.
So now we circle back to the human male's ongoing confusion. If you suddenly take away that loud, clear signal, the male is just thrust into a cognitive vacuum.
Totally.
Without pink butts, as one source says, how are we Homo sapiens males supposed to know what's going on in there?
Exactly. We are forced into millions of years of guessing. And in the process, we develop tools for sensitivity and commitment that are still, demonstrably prone to failure and confusion compared to a giant, pink, fragrant signal.
And the sources really emphasize that the male brain still operates under this evolutionary handicap.
It does. We were selected for sustained attraction, but not necessarily for perfect understanding. Human males have not fully evolved the skills for reliably reading reproductive viability in mood swings or subtle behavioral shifts. We're still working on it, evolutionarily speaking.
But the sources also mention one interesting counter-evolutionary move by females. An attempt, maybe, to bring back the missing signal.
Oh, you mean cycle synchronization?
Exactly. The ability to synchronize cycles.
Yeah, the theory is interesting. It suggests that if individual cycles are concealed, maybe the collective signal of a whole tribe of women going through a great hormonal tidal wave would finally provide that explicit signal the males are missing.
A coordinated collective estrus, if you will.
In a sense, yeah.
So did it work?
Not effectively, according to the sources. While cycle synchronization certainly happens in groups living in close quarters, the resulting signal seems to be too subtle for males.
Still not obvious enough.
Still not obvious enough. It failed as a reproductive signpost because it didn't create that immediate, overwhelming, unambiguous drive that the ancient physical estrus signal provided. The noise level, competing smells, daily distractions, the variability of individual women, it was just too high.
It's so important to remember the historical timeline here. This is a vast amount of time. 7 million years ago, it was all explicit signaling, efficiency, predictability.
All pink butts, yeah.
The transition to concealed ovulation and sustained confusion is, evolutionarily speaking, a very recent experiment.
It is, which explains why the male brain still seems to be playing catch-up. It's struggling to evolve complex psychological sensitivity at the speed necessary to replace a lost physical sign.
The confusion and the coyness. They're not character flaws.
They're the price we pay for the pair bond. We are the species that chose companionship and shared parenting over simple, predictable biological clarity.
And that choice demands that the female maintain the mystery to ensure her continued access to the male's resources and protection.
That sustained investment, that perpetual attempt to decode coyness, is precisely what secured the two-parent involvement necessary to raise a species with oversized, dependent brains.
The confusion is literally what saved us.
And it fundamentally changes the nature of attraction. Male attraction can no longer be based solely on a short-term physical signal. It has to be focused on the individual, the person.
Because the physical signal is an unreliable guide to fertility.
Exactly. So the selection pressure favored males who were capable of deeper, more stable, and more cognitive attachment. The pursuit of the elusive signal became the pursuit of the woman herself.
And the coyness is the female's way of managing the male's attention economy, ensuring he continues to view her as an irreplaceable partner, not just a 3-day-a-month opportunity.
The continuous state of low-level sexual availability keeps the male tethered. The combination of sustained attention and deep uncertainty is the most powerful evolutionary driver for pair bonding that we have.
This entire deep dive, it just shows us that the confusion and the complexity in our relationships, they aren't just accidental.
No, they are highly refined, essential features of the evolutionary engine that created the unique human pair bond. So, to synthesize the central conclusion here, the entire human relationship model, the coyness, the required male effort, the long-term bonding, and even our strange cultural taboos around the menstrual cycle, it all traces back to that evolutionary moment when ovulation went underground.
Right.
The function of human sexuality pivoted. It moved away from efficient impregnation and decisively toward social cohesion and sustained parental investment.
So what does this all mean? At the end of the day, it means the complexity and, the occasional frustration we all experience in relationships, they're direct consequences of a successful evolutionary gamble.
A gamble that paid off.
It did. Our species chose companionship, commitment, and complexity over the predictable, efficient clarity of the rest of the mammalian world. We are, in a very real sense, defined by the mystery we created.
And that framework is incredibly powerful when you think about it. A baboon's life is simple because reproduction is transparent and commitment is unnecessary.
Our lives are complicated.
Our lives are complicated because reproduction is secret, and that secrecy forces us to connect on a deeper, sustained cognitive level that transcends simple hormones.
We've established pretty clearly that the male confusion is a result of a lost signal, a kind of cognitive lag from our evolutionary past.
Yeah.
But the sources also hint at something crucial about the female strategy in all this. That the management of uncertainty, well, it implies a strategic power.
That is the perfect concluding thought. The sources suggest that throughout our history, and even observed in non-human primates, female apes, and possibly human females, have become incredibly adept at controlling the relationship narrative.
What do you mean by that? Controlling the narrative.
They trick males into thinking they are in charge.
In charge of the relationship, the courtship, the resources.
All of it. And the source notes they were so good at this trick, they even fooled the male scientists who were studying them for a long time.
That dynamic, the strategic control of the interaction, driven by the coy management of information, that's a dynamic worth mulling over.
Indeed. We'll have to save that discussion on the true locus of power in the pair bond for our next deep dive. But until then, maybe you'll view your own relationship complexities less as a flaw.
And more as the necessary, successful biological imperative that allowed humanity to thrive.
Exactly.
We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.